Week 8 of the fantasy football season, and here's tight end start sits every matchup this week. So Thursday Night Football, Bucks at the Bills, Cade Otton, borderline option. Last couple weeks, he's starting to get things going with Baker Mayfield in this Tampa Bay offense. Well, right now, I still don't trust him 100%. He's not going to crack my top 15 most likely in my rankings this week, but we know tight end's been a weak position this season, and every team is playing this week. But Cade Otton, I think, could be a decent option and more of a sleeper option if you have injuries or whatever the case may be. Dalton Kincaid is a start for me. Dawson Knox Stafford most likely not playing on the short week in Thursday Night Football. And we saw Dalton Kincaid have his best game of his career last week. 8 catches, 75 yards. So Josh Allen, we know he spreads the football out, even though Stephon Diggs gets a majority of the targets in this offense. But Dalton Kincaid, they draft him in the first round for a reason, and it could be a tight end on the verge of breaking out. So right now, with no Dawson Knox there, it'd be big for Dalton Kincaid to really break out and see what he has. Jets at the Giants, Tyler Conklin, he's been decent so far this season. But with every team playing in this Jet passing game, inconsistent versus a pretty solid Giant defense over the last few weeks. Tyler Conklin, he's going to be a sit for me. Darren Waller, last couple weeks with Tyrod Taylor, he's looked good. He's making plays, finding the end zone. And if Taylor starts in this game, Darren Waller, he could be a top 5 tight end this week. But right now, if Daniel Jones is healthy, he's going to play. They're paying him over $40 million per year, is this New York Giant team, and not going to have him sit on the bench. But either way, Darren Waller is a start, but his ceiling seems higher with Taylor at quarterback. Los Angeles Rams at the Dallas Cowboys. Tyler Higbee, ever since Cooper Kupp has been back in the starting lineup, he's pretty much been a non-factor for fantasy football, is Tyler Higbee. So right now, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp taking all the targets. Some targets as well going at Tutu Atwell as a deep ball threat for this Ram team. And I think this Ram team, they're going to abandon the run early in this game and drop back and throw it 40-45 times versus Dallas Cowboy defense. But even with that, Tyler Higbee's been inconsistent the last few weeks and not getting targets. Jake Ferguson is a start for me. This Ram team gives up the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. I know Ferguson the last 2 weeks, the numbers really haven't been there, but this week, I think it's a bounce-back game for Ferguson. This Dallas Cowboy team, they need this win 4-2. And if they want to make plays, I think this defense, they're going to roll coverage to CeeDee Lamb and hopefully could get Ferguson open. So this week, I got Ferguson getting back on track coming off the bye, and he's a start. Evan Ingram and the Jaguars at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ingram, we know he's locked in every week as a top 5, top 6 tight end. Him and Trevor Lawrence have been on the same page all season. You drafted him 7th, 8th round for a reason, and he's producing this season. Number 2 option in that offense, he's a start. Down there, Washington filling in for Pat Freiermuth, who's on IR, and he's out a few more weeks. And Washington's pretty much been non-existent. And now with Deontay Johnson back in the lineup last week as well. Targets to George Pickens, Johnson, and pretty much Warren, and maybe Calvin Austin is a deep threat, is the way this offense goes over there in Pittsburgh. So Washington is a sit. Dalton Schultz and the Texans at the Carolina Panthers. So Schultz, the first 3 weeks of the season, he looked like he was just a product of the Dallas Cowboys system. But the last few weeks before the bye week, him and CJ Stroud have been on the same page. He's been a red zone threat and a touchdown threat as well with 3 touchdowns on the season. And this week here, versus a pretty bad defense of the Carolina Panthers, I think Schultz has a good game once again. He's a start. Hayden Hurst is a sit. Hayden Hurst, the first week of the season, had a huge game. But besides that, we haven't seen much out of him. And this Texan defense, they've been stout for the most part this season. So right now, with Hurst not doing much and every team playing, he's an easy sit. New England Patriots at the Miami Dolphins. Hunter Henry early in the season as well had some big ball games. But for the most part, the last month of the season, we haven't seen much out of Hunter Henry. Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne, they've been the guys connecting. Demario Douglas, he got more of a role in last week's upset victory over the Buffalo Bills. And this week versus a Miami team, where I think this Miami team is going to come out with possibly Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey back in this game. It's going to be a long day for this New England Patriot team. And I don't see Henry doing much. Durham Smythe, another guy early in the season you thought could break out this season. But this offense is Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Raheem Mostert out of the backfield. Those are the guys getting all the targets. Those are the guys touching the football. And Durham Smythe is a red zone option and big target. I thought could get a few sneaky touchdowns this season. But that hasn't been the case. So this week he's a sit. Atlanta Falcons at the Tennessee Titans. Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith have both been usable this season here. And you rarely see that nowadays in the NFL. Two tight ends that have fantasy value and have been putting up consistent points. I know Jonnu Smith last week didn't do much for owners, but every other week it's pretty much been double-digit fantasy points since week 4. Kyle Pitts, he's a big play tight end. We know he can make all the catches as well. We saw a crazy behind-the-back catch last week from Kyle Pitts. And this week here, the Tennessee team that's bad against the pass, and Desmond Ridder relies on Pitts and Jonnu Smith and Drake London as top 3 options in the passing game. They're both starts for me. Chig Okongwu last season broke out towards the end of the year. But this season, it's been a train wreck, this passing game for this Tennessee team. They're not moving the football well. Ryan Tannehill, he's possibly not playing in this game with the ankle injury, even though he hasn't been good anyway this season. And Okongwu in a tough matchup versus solid D is a sit. TJ Hawkinson and the Vikings go to the Green Bay Packers. Hawkinson, we know he's a top 3, top 4 tight end each and every week. And this week versus a mediocre Packer defense. And Kirk Cousins and Hawkinson, since the trade last season, have been on the same page. And he relies on Hawkinson a lot in big situations and in the red zone. He's a must-start. Josiah DeRuga looks like he's going to start in this game. Luke Musgrave, he was in a boot after the loss to the Denver Broncos in Week 7. And right now, not much going on over there in the Green Bay passing game as well, besides Romeo Doubs for the most part. Jordan Love, he spread the football out, but the tight end really hasn't been a vocal point the last few weeks, so he's a sit in this one. Philadelphia Eagles at the Commanders. Dallas Goedert, last 3 weeks, really turning things around. And last week, once again, we saw him score a touchdown versus the Miami Dolphins. So this week here versus a weak Commander defense, where we just saw Darren Waller have a big game. Dallas Goedert once again rolls in this one and is a start. Logan Thomas, he's been a solid tight end this season. We saw him have a breakout game a few weeks ago with 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And this is going to be a game where they're going to be trailing early and often and have no choice but to throw the football a lot in this one. So Logan Thomas, I think, on volume, and he's a big red zone target as well, and pretty much number 2 or 3 option in this offense is a start. New Orleans Saints at the Indianapolis Colts. So Taysom Hill over the last few weeks, he's carved out a role once again, making some short passes, obviously running at the red zone, and even lining up as a tight end. So right now in ESPN and Yahoo Fantasy Sport Leagues, he's a tight end is Taysom Hill. No more quarterback eligibility. So this week here, we don't know if Juwan Johnson is coming back. But right now, he's been a good gadget once again for this offense. So Taysom Hill, you don't know what you're going to get from him weekly. So I'm going to list him borderline in this one. Now to the Colts, Kylan Granson, he missed last week with a concussion, but he's pretty much been a tight end, not doing much this season. He's a sit. Mo Alley-Cox, he'll have his 1 or 2 great games a season as Cox, but obviously you're not going to trust him as well. He's a sit. Cleveland Browns at the Seattle Seahawks. David Njoku, he said he's 100% feeling good and ready to go now after he had the burns over the last few weeks. He's played in the games, but obviously it was tough for him. But last week he did finish with over 10 fantasy points in PPR leagues. But right now, looking like PJ Walker once again is going to be a quarterback, I would think, here for this Cleveland Brown team. And even if it's Deshaun Watson, I don't think Njoku anymore is a tight end you can count on week in and week out, and with every team playing. At best, he's borderline. Noah Fant's a sit for me this week. Noah Fant, he had a few decent games early in the season. Right now, his targets have gone down over the last few weeks, with Smith-Njigba being more part of this offense. Jake Bobo the last couple weeks as well, being part of the Seattle Seahawks offense. And right now, Geno Smith's targeting Coley Parkinson more than Noah Fant. So this week, Fant in a tougher matchup versus a good defense is a sit. Kansas City Chiefs at the Broncos. Travis Kelce, we know he's the best tight end in the league. This season, it seems like he's having even bigger ball games, with a couple games already this year with 100 yards in the first half. So he's a start once again in the weak Bronco defense. Adam Troutman's filling in for Greg Dulcich, who's on IR. Once again, we haven't seen much out of the tight end position over there in Denver. He's a sit. Now, Cincinnati Bengals at the San Francisco 49ers. Drew Sample is a sit for me in this one. He really hasn't done much this season. And this offense has pretty much been Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd the majority of the season. We really haven't seen much out of T. Higgins as well in this Cincinnati Bengal offense. So right now in this one, I think the Bengals are going to lean on Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase to get them through this game and try to pull out a victory at San Francisco. So Sample or Smith Jr., whoever it is, at tight end this week is a sit. George Kittle's a start. Kittle, I know he hasn't been that great this season. 3 good games and 4 bad games for the most part. But Kittle, he had a good game Monday Night Football at the Vikings, 78 yards in that one. We know Kittle and Purdy have a good rapport. And with Deebo Samuel most likely out once again in this game here, I think more targets once again for George Kittle. And he's a start. Baltimore Ravens at the Arizona Cardinals. Mark Andrews, I think he's starting to get almost 100% healthy. Last week, 2 touchdowns at the Lions. And the thing for me is it was yards after catch for Andrews, where he looked good. He was breaking tackles, and he had the nose for the goal line. So this week here versus one of the worst defenses in the league, I think Mark Andrews, once again, is a top 2-3 option and is a must-start. Trey McBride is a sit for me. We know Zach Ertz, once again hurt, went on IR. Not out for the season, but at least minimum 4 games. So Trey McBride, he was one of the better college standout tight ends a few seasons ago. Last season, we saw him fill in for Zach Ertz towards the end of the year, but we really didn't see much out of Trey McBride. So in this one, I don't expect to see much out of him once again. And it'll take a few weeks maybe for him to get going. But right now, this Arizona Cardinal offense really hasn't moved the football in the passing game in the last 2 weeks. He's a sit. Sunday Night Football, Chicago Bears at the Los Angeles Chargers. Cole Kmet's a sit for me. Last week he had the goose egg. Him and Justin Fields obviously have a good rapport, but him and Tyson Beckett so far in the few quarters we've seen from Beckett, starting last week and a few quarters filling in for Fields a few weeks ago, he's not had a rapport with him. He's not really getting targeted. And this week here, I know it's a good matchup at Los Angeles Chargers, but he's a sit. Gerald Everett's a sit for me. He's not 100% coming into this game, and he's pretty much been a touchdown-dependent tight end. So if he's not finding the end zone, he's pretty much only getting 2 or 3 targets per game, and the majority of the targets are going to Keenan Allen, Joshua Palmer, and Austin Eckler out of the backfield. Donald Parham, we know he's a goal line threat, big 6'8" tight end who's had a couple touchdowns so far this season, but obviously he's another guy as well. If he's not scoring a touchdown, he's not an option, and he's available in 95% of fantasy leagues, so he's not even on the radar, and he's a sit in the final game of the week. Monday Night Football, Raiders at the Lions. Michael Mayer, he's a borderline option for me. Mayer's been more involved in this offense over the last few weeks here, but right now it's been a carousel of quarterback. We saw Garoppolo start early in the season. He's been hurt on and off the last few games. Brian Hoyer started last week. He couldn't move the football as well. And Aidan O'Donnell, he was actually pretty decent a few weeks ago when he started, but for whatever reason they went to Hoyer, so we don't know who's going to be the quarterback this week on Monday night at the Lions. But right now, Michael Mayer, he's been the third option in the passing game behind Adams, Myers, and then Mayer. So this week, in deeper leagues, he's borderline, and Sam Laporta, he's been a top 5, top 6 tight end in fantasy points pretty much the whole season. So this week here versus a weak-rated defense, I think Sam Laporta is going to get back on track in this one. And this Lion team, they're going to focus a little bit more after getting the doors blown off and embarrassing Baltimore. I think this week this is a pass-happy team to get things going once again, and Laporta is a must-start. So that's tight end start sits for Week 8 every matchup.